Well, I actually collapsed from sleep deprivation, exhaustion, burnout, hit my head on my desk, broke my cheekbone. And that was the beginning of my recognition that burnout was not just my problem, but a global epidemic. I think people who are burnt out are more likely to be depressed and anxious. So I wish somebody had told me that taking care of myself, taking time to recharge, is actually the best thing I can do for my performance and my productivity and my career. Live life as though everything is rigged in your favor. We're always going to make mistakes. If we just learn from our mistakes and move on and come present, then we save so much energy. We can bring joy into our lives so that we don't measure our life just by how productive we are, but how joyful we are.
Arianna Huffington is the founder of the Huffington Post and author of New York Times bestsellers The Sleep Revolution and Thrive. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the importance of sleep and how to avoid burnout. I'm Erica Kohlberg. This is Arianna Taught Me, and today we're here with Arianna Huffington. I wanted to start off by asking you, a lot of people look up to you for career advice now. What's something that you wish someone would have told you early in your career?
So I wish somebody had told me that taking care of myself, taking time to recharge, is actually the best thing I can do for my performance and my productivity and my career. There is this huge mindset shift that is happening right now, and I wish it had happened earlier for me. When instead of my believing that burnout is the price I had to pay for success, that's what I wish I knew earlier.
Yeah, because you had, I believe it was in 2007, you had a very real realization that you just can't press your body that far.
Well, I actually collapsed from sleep deprivation, exhaustion, burnout, hit my head on my desk, broke my cheekbone. And that was the beginning of my recognition that burnout was not just my problem, but a global epidemic. And at the time, I was running the Huffington Post. So we started covering these issues on HuffPost. And by 2016, I decided, Erica, that I didn't just want to raise awareness. I also wanted to help people change behavior, which is hard, but doable. And so I wrote two books, Thrive and The Sleep Revolution. And in 2016, I decided to leave the Huffington Post and start a new company, behavior change technology company called Thrive, to help people change their daily behaviors and as a result improve their health, productivity, and mental health, which is becoming a bigger and bigger issue since the pandemic.
When you look back at your collapse, what are some of the warning signs for burnout that you wish you would have seen in yourself before that collapse happened?
That's a great question. So, what is interesting is that when you are burnt out, you don't even realize that you are burnt out sometimes. And right now, that's changing because there's so much discussion around burnout. But in 2007, if you had asked me that morning, Arianna, how are you? I would have said fine, because I had gotten so used to being perpetually running on empty. So now we have a lot more recognition of what the signs are. Obviously, exhaustion, but also cynicism, feeling kind of negative about everything. And then your own personal efficacy, your own self worth suffers. So these are sort of signs. The World Health Organization has acknowledged them in 2019. So all that is happening in real time.
Yeah.
And as we see in the news, Erica, there are still a lot of leaders who have not acknowledged and recognized the science of performance. I mean, look at Elon Musk. He's actually a cautionary tale about how not to lead. He brags about working 24/7, 7 days a week. and doesn't make the connection between um, being exhausted and making bad decisions.
Hmm.
And the fact that he's brilliant shows that you can be brilliant, but still um, not really acknowledge and live on the science of top performance, which athletes are doing. You know, you see athletes talking about how recovery is part of peak performance.
Hmm. When you were starting your career and growing in it, what were the cultural signals that indicated to you that, okay, if in order to succeed and climb up the ladder, I do need to push myself harder and create this work ethic that we know is quite bad for you, this burnout ethic?
Well, it was all around us, still is, but now we're in the middle of a cultural transformation. And there are some trailblazers and there are some laggards. But when I was starting my career, um, it was universally assumed that you had to be on 24/7. Um, John Bon Jovi sang "I'll Sleep When I'm Dead." Um, it was a very different mainstream culture. People bragged about how little sleep they got, or answering work in the middle of the night, etc. That's changing. Now a lot of people compete about how much sleep they got. I'm wearing my Aura ring, and I track, my sleep and my deep sleep and my REM sleep. So the pandemic, which has been so hard and has been so painful for millions of people, is also a catalyst for fundamental change and gives us a once in a generation opportunity to redefine how we work and live.
Do you think that change and the catalyst has to come from the top? Does it have to be your boss telling you, okay, I don't expect you to be answering emails at 11 p.m.? Where does that change need to come from?
Oh, everywhere, everywhere. Of course, it's great if it comes from the top, but people can't wait to be given permission. This is their life, and it's not a dress rehearsal, Erica. So when we look at um, the chronic diseases that are proliferating or the mental health crisis, we see that people are paying a heavy price. And so they need to take action themselves. I mean, I know you did when you left your high paying job to start your own company because they were um, not able to allow you to deal with a medical emergency. So I think obviously people have to do it in a way which doesn't leave them at risk financially, but definitely their intention needs to be to work somewhere where they can do amazing work. I mean, I love my work. I think it's fantastic to have a job you're engaged in, but rejecting hustle culture and rejecting the idea that you need to burn out in order to succeed.
Hmm. I love the concept, but I can already see my 26-year-old self when I first started at the law firm saying, well, if I decide that I'm going to set these boundaries and prioritize sleep and not answer emails after a certain time, there's always going to be another fresh eyed law graduate who is going to outwork me. And there's also that extra level of, well, I'm a woman in a male dominated industry of law. In order to be able to stand out, I need to work harder than everyone else. So I just find that, isn't it tough as a young person starting out in a career to practically apply this?
I think it's a question of working smarter. I think hard work is a given. I don't think there's anybody who can succeed without hard work. Work through all hours has diminishing returns. So I think again we need to look at the science and we need to look at data. Look at yourself if you are working 24/7. Are you making good decisions? Is your judgment where it needs to be? If you're a lawyer, what your clients expect from you is your judgment, your counsel, and your decisions. I wouldn't want a lawyer who is sleep deprived. So again, that's the mindset shift that has to happen.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a revolutionary mindset shift because since the Industrial Revolution, we have revered machines. And the goal with machines and with software is to minimize downtime. But for the human operating system, downtime is not a bug, it's a feature. And when we realize that, we see that there is no trade off between our sense of well being and our performance. The two go hand in hand.
Hmm. When you started looking into the science behind sleep, what surprised you the most?
What surprised me is how unequivocal um, are the conclusions. Now there are thousands of scientific sleep centers around the world, and the conclusions are universal that sleep is foundational, both to our immunity and to our cognitive health. If you want, it's the supercharger um, to our cognitive health. And you may be thinking, well, how much sleep is enough? Well, there are some people, actually between 1% and 1.5% of the population, that has a genetic mutation and they don't need a lot of sleep. But if you are in the majority, it's between 7 and 9 hours. I'm an 8-hour girl, and I prioritize it. Now, there is always going to be nights when I have a delayed flight, or something happens and I can't get the sleep I need. That doesn't matter. What matters is what happens every day.
Hmm.
It's not what happens occasionally.
And how are you making sure that 8 hours of sleep that you do get is high quality?
Well, I believe, and we practice that with the people who work with in different companies. I believe in a transition to sleep. So the first part of the transition is kind of declaring an end to the working day, because the truth is nobody has a real end to their working day. I'm sure you could stay up all night answering texts and emails and handling things. So you need to declare an end. Um, Make sure you handled all the priorities. Be comfortable with incompletions. You'll handle the next day. And the ritual that marks the end of my working day is turning off my phone and charging it outside my bedroom.
Sometimes I really try to prioritize my sleep, and I know that creating that routine of turning off my phone is the best way I can do it, but it's also very hard to create the routine. It's easy for me to do maybe 1 or 2 days, but then I
Yes,
find that
well,
I
start
can't be
somewhere.
consistent.
That's what micro steps are. You start somewhere, and then you do it one day, and then you see how you feel, that you slept better, you feel better, and then you do it again.
I also read that there's something about the light that your phone emits that does make it harder for you to fall asleep, and when you do fall asleep, you have worse quality sleep. Is that have you heard of this or is that true?
Yes, of course, the blue light. Yes. The blue light is another factor, but also the fact that your phone is the repository of every problem, every project you are dealing with. So you need to separate yourself from it in order to be able to get a good night's sleep.
So that's the big one thing we should do is everyone put their phone to sleep before we actually go to sleep.
Yes, I think, it's not about should, it's about whether you want to have a great day the next day. Whether you want to drag yourself through the day feeling exhausted, or whether you want to wake up feeling ready to take on the day and all the challenges. It's a choice.
Yeah. How do you think your career would have been different if you had learned earlier on to prioritize sleep? Do you think you would have been able to accomplish as much as you did?
You see, you don't really believe in what I'm saying.
I believe in some of it, but I also
I think you are confusing hard work with work that has diminishing returns. I've always worked hard. I work hard now. I love my work. I feel very blessed. But if you look at the science, Erica, you see that working through the night is not going to be your best work.
I think it was just my career upbringing was the law firm. I mean, you had even as an intern at the law firm, I had to work all-nighters. And I remember it was a badge of pride to be able to say, "Oh, I've worked all-nighters, like, yeah, I was working on this deal."
Right.
And then when I started as a full-time lawyer at the law firm, there was this one time where we were working until 4 AM multiple nights in a row. And then one day I was working till 4 AM, and then I woke up at 8 AM instead of 7 AM when my boss wanted me to be online, and he scolded me. He was like, "Erica, I'm so disappointed in you, can't do that." So in my career specifically, the which it was the big law firm, it would not have worked for me to say, "Oh, I'm gonna be sleeping 8 hours." So that's the only reason I'm skeptical for this specific subset of my career, which was big law.
Absolutely. I think big law is still having a hard time accepting the science. Medicine is another profession where um, residents and others have incredibly long hours and make terrible mistakes, make mistakes that cost people's lives. I mean, if you look at the mistakes being made by lawyers, I mean, I remember just one case of a lawyer who was very hardcore. She didn't believe in any of that well being stuff, worked round the clock. When the day came for a big trial, she was a trial lawyer. She had a panic attack. She could not show up in court. So that we pay a big price that is hidden by buying into the being on all day and all night. And you did the right thing. You left. And, I think people need to either find law firms that are a little more advanced, but and prove. I think people can really prove that they're going to be better lawyers. I mean, it's what do clients pay you for? They pay you for your judgment, they pay you for your counsel. We know from science that when you're exhausted and depleted and running on empty, it's a little bit like being legally drunk. Would you want a drunk lawyer making decisions for you?
No.
Then why would you want a lawyer who'd been on 24/7?
Yeah. When did you decide to start it? Was it right after your collapse, or it was quite a bit it was 9 years
No,
after?
it was 2016. It
Okay.
was after I had been covering these issues at the Huffington Post and raising awareness. And then I wanted to help people change behavior.
Are you happier now doing what you're doing versus when you were running the Huffington Post?
I loved running the Huffington Post. I think I love what I'm doing now. I'm feel incredibly blessed to be doing something that has a real impact on people's lives and that has become very much part of our mainstream conversation since the pandemic.
With the pandemic, we saw all of these companies moving to this work from home model. Do you think the work from home model makes it actually easier for employees to be able to prioritize their well-being?
Not necessarily. I think right now, the majority of companies have a hybrid model, 2, 3 days at the office or work from home or completely remote if they have employees who are not near any office. I think the key is if people are not in the office all the time, you need to create rituals to build the social capital that we lose because we're not um, running into each other in the kitchen, being able to have these conversations about our lives that
Mhm.
bring us closer to each other. So we launched in our platform what we call Thrive Reset, which is 60 seconds based on the science that tells us that while stress is inevitable, cumulative stress is avoidable. So this 60-second research to focus on your breathing or what you're grateful for or get up and stretch come to you either on the Thrive app or on Microsoft Teams or
Mhm.
Slack. So anytime you're feeling stressed or if you've been on wall-to-wall Zooms, you can take a break, 60-second break. Nobody can say, I don't have 60 seconds. And also, as part of our onboarding, we have every employee create their own reset with things that give them joy, um, people, pets, quotes, music. One of my favorite quotes is um, Rumi, live life as though everything is rigged in your favor. So suddenly, in 60 seconds, when I'm feeling stressed, I'm reminded of what I love about my life,
Hmm.
and and it interrupts the cycle of stress, which is key because if stress becomes cumulative during the day, by the end of the day, you're feeling like you're marinated in cortisol. And then that's when people engage in dysfunctional behaviors, binge drinking, binge eating, binge scrolling on your phone to kind of calm themselves down and unwind.
Yeah. The binge scrolling is quite an interesting thing because obviously I create content on TikTok and I know as a user too how addictive it is to
Yes.
scroll on TikTok. And I hear that a lot of people do it as a way to escape from their reality. And that's probably what I do too. I do it as a stress relief. Do you think social media is ultimately a good thing or a bad thing for well-being?
I think it depends on whether you have boundaries. Um, I mean, there is a lot of good stuff about social media. The work you are doing, helping people learn how to manage money, is very important. But if you spend the night binge scrolling instead of sleeping, you're going to wake up exhausted. And when you are exhausted, you are also more likely to engage in negative fantasies, to look at the world in dark colors, to put yourself down. I have that voice in my head that I call the obnoxious roommate living in my head that puts you down, that judges your mistakes. If you are recharged and connected with your own joy, everything is different.
How does burnout intersect with mental health, so anxiety and depression? Is it that people who have anxiety and depression are more likely to get burnt out
And the other way around.
and the other way around?
I think people who are burnt out are more likely to be depressed and anxious. We've done actually a course, and that's available on the Thrive platform with Stanford based on the latest brain research, which is identifying your stress types that if you don't address it becomes depression and anxiety, and if you don't address it you're more likely to burn out. Like mine, I'm a ruminator. Ruminators tend to, again, put yourself down, judge your mistakes. So I'm learning how to set what we call worry time so that if something comes up that upsets me about what I did or said or whatever, um, I, I tell that voice in my head, hey, on Thursday we have worry time at 3:15, so we can handle it then. And negative bias is another stress type. People who look at the future, which is very uncertain, especially now, and imagine the worst. And it's kind of amazing the difference it makes when you're aware of what your own stress type is and what you can do to prevent um, what you're experiencing becoming depression and anxiety.
I think I may be a ruminator too, because I know recently I went on a podcast and I just felt like I didn't do a good job. I stuttered a lot and didn't really get my points across. And I spent the next 2 or 3 days just thinking about how upset I was at myself. And I was replaying the questions that I was asked in my head, being like, oh, this would have been a better answer. Is that, does that sound like a
Amazing. You sound
ruminator?
like me, Erica. No more, no more. You have to now decide that it's not worth it because we're always going to make mistakes. If we just learn from our mistakes and move on and come present, then we save so much energy because I remember I used to be so much like the person you described. And it's the most exhausting and depleting thing because it's much more exhausting than doing the podcast or writing the article or the book. So I have definitely taught myself how to also use humor. You know, a sense of humor helps.
Yeah. So your best advice for me would be to set aside have the sense of humor and then set time
Set
to
a time. So
stress?
when that voice comes and says, "Oh, the way you answered that question didn't make sense," or whatever that voice says, it's a very bitchy voice. Mine is too. You just say, "Okay, I get it. We're going to put that down when we have worry time," and you know it works.
What are you worrying about these days? What do you still worry about?
So my main worries are about my children. I'm working on it, but I have two daughters, and I'm very, very close to them. And I find that it's so important for me to deal with worries around them. I have really managed worries around work or anything else. So my my area of improvement now is around my kids.
Yeah. So if you wanted people to walk away with 3 action items today to just improve their overall well-being, what would be the 3 action items you'd say?
Great. Why don't we mention my three favorite micro steps?
Yes.
The first is when you decide that your working day is done, whenever that is, turn off your phone and charge it outside your bedroom. And as we discussed, Erica, if that seems super hard, do it one day a week. And then gradually you can add other nights. The other is in the morning when you wake up. Can you take 60 seconds before you go to your phone to take some deep breaths, to set your intention for the day, or to just remember what you're grateful for? And the third micro step is what we call habit stacking. When you are doing something that doesn't require your brain, washing your hands, washing the dishes, can you use that time to remember three things you're grateful for? You know, it's quite amazing how our brain tends to focus on the problems in our lives. So we need to constantly remind ourselves of what we love about our lives because the truth is that life is always a mixture. There are great things and bad things. There is no life that consists only of amazing things, except on Instagram.
What are your 3 happy things for today?
My three happy things are being here with you. I love what you're doing and the advice you're giving. And I feel that when you see how, when you take care of yourself, you're better at everything you want to do, it's going to affect a lot of people. So I love being with you. And you promise you're not going to ruminate, right?
I promise.
The second thing is I love my coffee. I just love coffee. And this is my bulletproof coffee. I don't know about that. If you know about that, it's like made with really good Irish butter. Your husband knows about it, he said, and no dairy. So I love my coffee. And the other thing is I just found a great new song. It's really not a song, it's an aria, a Verdi aria from an opera. And I played, and when I played, I've been playing it all morning, driving everybody around me nuts. It gives me a jolt of joy, which I often get from music. So I'm not going to be playing it until I'm sick of it, which happens whenever the last song that I became obsessed with was Taylor Swift, You Need to Calm Down. And
It's a
again,
good
I
one.
played it endlessly and now I can't even hear it. So these are three things.
I actually have the same personality type. Like, I will listen to songs on repeat over and over again until I get sick of them.
Okay, so your turn. Three things you are grateful
I'm
for.
very grateful for this. I remember I told your team this, but when I first started seeing signs of burnout, I remember I read your book, Thrive. And before then, I had never heard of the term burnout.
Yes.
And if I hadn't read Thrive, I don't think I would have recognized that I was burning out.
Oh, that's
So that
amazing. That
was
makes me feel so good.
so that was very cool to see this come full circle from the way you impacted me in 2016, 2017 when I was reading your book to now. Um, Number 2, I'm very grateful to be in New York. It's the cold weather is kind of
Yes.
nice right now. And then 3, my friend is getting engaged tonight, so I'm excited for
Oh,
him.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it.
So we have a little closing tradition. I'm going
Yes.
to ask you a final question. The podcast is called Arianna Taught Me, but
Yes.
really today is all about Arianna Huffington taught me. So what do you want people to be able to walk away saying, Arianna Huffington taught me this?
So I want people to walk away knowing that we can bring joy into our lives so that we don't measure our life just by how productive we are, but how joyful we are. And when we give ourselves time to recharge, we are going to have more joy because when we are depleted and exhausted, it's very hard to be joyful. And from that place, we can make our best decisions at work and in our lives. And from that place, we can be most loving and giving to the people we care about. And why not, guys? It's kind of amazing to learn that as young as many of the people watching are, and then have your whole life to practice it.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you for all you're doing.
If you enjoyed today's episode, I know you'll love following Arianna Huffington on LinkedIn. And also, I have a huge favor to ask. It would mean a lot if you could take a moment to leave a review for the podcast. Even just one sentence is perfect. It really helps support the work we're doing. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today, and I'll talk to you next Tuesday on a brand new episode of Arianna Taught Me.